Okay.
I did qualify with the carbine. There was a little baby, that's a baby 30 caliber rifle. I did qualify as a marksman, just as a matter of incidental training.
So you had a lot of training in radar and equipment?
No radio. We didn't have radar then. Radar was just barely invented, but it had not really been used very, very strongly, except by the Air Force and also by the U.S. Navy for tracking submarines and so forth. But we didn't have radar very deeply.
So it was not really used in the European theater, but
it was used, Jim, but not by the ground forces as much as by the United States Army Air Corps.
Okay.
The Army Air Corps at the time, let me add to that, was part of the U.S. Army, not the Air Force as a separate unit. The Army Air Corps was, of course, we had propeller-driven airplanes at the time, not jet airplanes. The Germans had jet planes, but the Americans had only propeller-driven. That would be the Mustang, the Thunderbolt, and the Lightning, in addition to the two heavy bombers, the Liberators and the Flying Fortresses.
So who did you train with in basic training?
Who did I train with?
No, who? Like what kind of, were they all like you? Were they?
Oh yeah, we were largely all just high school kids just out of high school, mostly.
You kids that you graduated with high school, how many of them dropped out 4F or because of physical disabilities?
Well, how many dropped out?
Yeah, what percentage do you think?
Gosh, Jim, I don't think anybody dropped out. You mean dropped out of high school?
No, failed to because of 4F or because.
That I don't know. That never became a very significant.
Most of the people you graduated with ended up.
We were all drafted pretty much chain link type of thing, or assembly line type of.
And most of you went. I mean.
Oh yes, we had our choice to join the Army, Navy, or Marines. And the only reason I chose the Army is that I got seasick. And so I did not choose the Navy, nor the Marines. So I preferred the Army because I was pretty sure-footed. I'd done a lot of hiking and Boy Scouts and camping and so on. So I felt more secure on the ground than I did in the water. So I selected the Army.
By then, did you know if you were in the Army, you would be in Europe, and if you were in the Marines?
Oh, no, we had no chance. We didn't know where we were going to go. Until long after basic training was over. We could have all been sent to Japan, to the Pacific, and or to Europe, and or to Alaska, and or to possibly a few other worldly outposts. But we didn't know we were going to Europe until we were assigned until we were told to report to Fort Meade, Maryland, on the east coast of America.
That was after basic training?
Oh yes,
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. After basic training, we were given I believe it was a 2 or 3 week furlough to go home and see our family and friends whom we had not seen in 17 weeks, and then kiss them goodbye. And then we were told to report to Fort Meade, Maryland. And we knew then that it would be overseas, to Europe, because it was on the East Coast instead of on the West Coast. If we had been sent to the West Coast, like Camp Roberts, probably we'd have gone to the Pacific Theater. But it turned out we went to the European Theater.
So your point of embarkation was Maryland?
Fort Meade, Maryland.
Okay.
Oh, no. Our staging area was Fort Meade, Maryland. We actually got on the boat, on the troop ship, at Providence, Rhode Island, up around, which was called Camp Miles Standish, at Providence, just out of Providence, Rhode Island. That's where we got on the troop ship. Some 2,000 soldiers on board the troop ship.
How long did it take to go from?
10 days.
10 days.
And we landed in Glasgow, Scotland, on April 1st, And I remember that day very clearly because it was my young kid sister's birthday, April
You're
Fool's Day.
44 now.
1944, that's
Okay.
correct.
And when you got to Glasgow, did you have any additional training overseas?
Excuse me?
Did you have additional training in Europe after you arrived?
Yes, we had what you call a preemptory preparation training for the invasion of Normandy.
So this is about, you said April?
2 months
2 months, right.
prior training. That was called the finalization of training. It was specifically for invasion.
So you were part of the rehearsals then for the Norman invasion?
That's right. Well, our entire unit was, yes. It was the 8th Infantry Division.
And where did
Preparation.
Where was that? Is that what,
A little camp called Camp St. Audrey in England, just on the inland end of the Bristol Bay of England. Bristol Bay.
the south coast, right?
Yes, southwest coast, and across the bay was Bristol, and beyond that was Ireland. And we were at the intake. Cardiff, Wales was further out. Wales, oh, excuse me, not Ireland, it was Wales that was further west of our little camp. And the division took up a wide, vast area of that space, but my little particular unit, the 43rd Field Artillery Battalion, was centered in Quonset huts in Bristol Bay, at the mouth of the Bristol Bay. Excuse me, the source of the Bristol Bay, the beginning of it, not the mouth of it would be out on the Irish Sea. I got my terminology twisted around there for a minute.
So when you first landed on the continent, was it
Normandy Beach?
Normandy Beach? Okay,
Yes.
you were part of the invasion.
That's right.
Okay, so June 6th, 44 then.
Well, for me it was June 7, 1944, the day after. But the initial units landed on June 6th. Now the reason was that I was in the artillery and we could not land on the same day because the beach had to first be secured by the infantry, not by the artillery. In other words, we couldn't land cannons on the beach that were still in a question as to whether or not we would be successful. So after the success of the beachhead was established by the infantry, that would be the 13th Infantry Division of the 13th Infantry Regiment of the 8th Infantry Division. After the beach was secured by the Allies, then we brought in the tanks and also the artillery for bolstering and for fulfilling the assault. But we couldn't have done it without first the infantry landing. And they landed on June 6th, and we all waited until June the 7th to make sure that the landing would be safe for the heavy equipment which followed in.
So you were not taking fire on the 7th. They had cleared out the beach.
Well, wait a minute. Say that again, please.
By the 7th, you were at Normandy.
Yes.
They were no longer taking fire.
Oh, yes, we were. We were
okay.
getting shelled because the Germans had pulled back, and they had the beaches all zeroed in from further back. After they lost the beach, after they lost the Normandy Beach, or in other words, after we established the beachheads, the Germans pulled back into the hedgerow country, and they secured their guns and hid their guns, say as far back as a quarter of a mile, and then they let us have it.
Shells?
From behind the lines, camouflaged. And our airplanes couldn't find them because they were hidden under trees and behind logs and in farmers' sheds and in all kinds of barns and other stone placements and so on.
Were you able to return fire?
Excuse me?
Were you able to return fire at any?
Only if we could spot where the guns were. But the infantry had to proceed us and find out where the guns were and silence them at the time. We set up our guns up on the bluff after we got off the sand. The number one primary concern is to get off the beach as quick as you can.
Because you're down and they're up and you're firing.
Well, the beach was flat for about 100 yards, and then we had the bluffs, just about 100 yards beyond. To get off those beaches, get up on the bluffs where you can take shelter and hide. And as the Germans would shell the beach, we were safe because we weren't there. But they would shell the beach and beyond the beach, because there's many, many boats and barges and other ships that were unloading supplies, and tanks coming in off the LSTs. LST means landing ship tank.
How long did it take you to get from the beach to up on the bluff?
Well, for us, after the beach was secured, just a matter of, say, 10 or 15 minutes. But for the infantry ahead of us, it took us one whole day or more in certain locations. The beach was not secured. In other locations, see, the beach is about 35 miles long, and different sections of it had tough going. The beach was quick to assault. Other places they were beaten back into the water, and various other places they had to pull back because the beach was mined with land mines and sea mines. So if trucks and tanks and people stepped on those mines, they'd blow themselves up. So we had to call in the combat engineers to clear the entire beach of mines, which were buried in the sand. And before that part, so the Omaha beach was secured in segments of patches. Some were safe and quick, others were very, very disastrous.
Who was your commanding officer during this?
Well, during all this time, I would say, well, there was, you mean of my same unit?
Yeah, your unit, yeah.
Oh, we had Colonel Henshaw, Henshaw. He was in command of our battalion at the time. Yes, but Colonel Henshaw. And then he disappeared. I don't know why or where it happened to him. And we had various other high-ranking officers take over. There was a tremendous rotation of officers. Some had died, some were wounded, some were designated, some were relieved, and others were moved up into all kinds of methods of selection.
So after you got up on the
bluffs?
beach, on the bluffs, did you keep advancing?
No, we had to slow down very, very definitely. We advanced very minutely, very shortly, but the going was tough because that was called the hedgerow country. And the hedgerow country was, in some cases, the fields weren't any more than 50 yards apart. And on the other side of the hedgerow, there'd be the German positions, but we couldn't see them. So if we would advance, we might run into a machine gun nest. So we had to go very, very slowly and call for the infantry and for the mortars and for, in some cases, air support if they could be spotted, but not always. That was called the hedgerow country, and it was pretty much that way, Jim, up until, well, let's just say St. Lo, which was a very famous, dastardly place for our battle. The Germans were very deeply and strongly entrenched there as an anchor point. And the hedgerow country, some days we'd advance an eighth of a mile. The next day we'd advance a couple hundred yards. The following day we'd have to give it up because the Germans would counterattack and we had to pull back and they would reposition themselves.
How long did it take you to get to St. Lo?